I'm here with Dr. Kelsey Ellis from the University of Tennessee. And Dr. Ellis, we have had four tornadoes in a 2 week time frame just within our viewing area. It's been a super active spring this year, but folks are starting to notice kind of an eastward trend with the areas that are typically affected by tornadoes. The things that are going around on the internet are that Tornado Alley is shifting eastward. So let's just dive right in and talk about it. First, let's talk about what is Tornado Alley to start with.
Yeah, so Tornado Alley is a term that's been around for a long time to describe the area in the central US, known as the Great Plains, in Kansas, Oklahoma, that area, as the heightened area of tornado risk in the US. But really, scientists have started saying, please drop the term Tornado Alley, because as you know, that causes people in that area to think, hey, we're at risk to tornadoes, while people in the Southeast may think they're less at risk, and that's not the case.
And I mean, we've always had tornadoes here in the southeast as well. So it's not unusual to see tornadic activity here. There seems to have been a shift in the past several years, as you were mentioning, of where the areas are most likely to see that tornadic activity. But let's talk a little bit more about that. The tornadoes here in the southeast, are we seeing an uptick in those numbers as well?
Yeah, as you said, it's been an active season, and that can happen, on a given year. But overall, we are seeing more active seasons in the Southeast. And researchers have looked at this quite a few ways. One way is looking at tornado reports through history. And so we could say, look at 1950 till now, or 1970 or 80 till now, whatever level of data you trust. And we see that more tornadoes are happening in the Southeast in recent years than the Great Plains, where they're decreasing. And so if you don't trust tornado reports because it takes people seeing them and that's a really complex data set, they've also started to look at ingredients that cause tornadoes. And they're seeing that same shift where there's fewer days where the ingredients overlap in the Great Plains or traditional tornado alley to cause tornadoes, and more days are happening in the southeast where all of those ingredients overlap to cause tornadic storms.
And let's talk about what some of those ingredients are and the weather patterns that you're talking about here. So you're saying kind of the ingredients and the weather patterns as a whole are kind of shifting east?
Yeah, and it's pretty complex because there are so many different ways you can get tornadic storms to form, as you know, and it really differs in the Great Plains and the Southeast. So really, I like to think that the same thing, that different things can be causing a decrease in traditional tornado alley than are causing more happening in the Southeast now. Because here we have moisture all year round, right? And so we're like always primed with a humid environment to cause storms. There, they only get it in the spring and in the summer. And then their tornado risk kind of goes away because they don't have the moisture or the jet stream that we have all year round. And so we're looking for places where the perfect ingredients collide at the same time. And it seems that the Southeast is becoming that place more often because we always have the moisture. We often have the jet stream, and now we're even seeing increased instability. And so we just have an environment that's more favorable to all the different types of storms that can cause tornadoes.
And tornadoes in the southeast can be really tricky. I know people watch a movie like Twister or Twisters, where people are standing out in the plains and they're like, "Oh, there it comes." Ours are not like that here in the southeast. Can you kind of explain why it's a little trickier to forecast them in our region?
Yeah, sure. And I always beg my students when they're like, oh, I want to go chase these storms to give a chance of tornadoes. Say, I'm like, don't chase storms in Tennessee or the Southeast in general, because I mean, you can't see them because of hills and trees. They're often rain wrapped and they're often even occurring at night. And so, really, it's not a place where they're easy to forecast. And those are some of the reasons. Also, we get messier types of convection. And in the Great Plains, you get to see these really pretty supercells that are dropping a very predictable tornado and then it lifts up and goes away. Whereas here in the Southeast, we have these clusters of storms. We've got to figure out, as you well know, which one has the rotation that's going to make a tornado happen, which doesn't, and they're much harder to forecast. And so, really, you can imagine with this shift of storms more towards the Southeast, we're going to have more problematic tornado events because they're harder to forecast, harder to see, and harder to warn for. And so, as great as weather forecasting is right now, some of these are nearly impossible to predict where the tornado will actually happen.
And sometimes they're even hard to see on the radar when they are happening.
Yeah.
They're rain wrapped. There's sometimes such heavy rain, the radar is having a hard time kind of seeing through it. In addition to that example, we just had a tornado. It lasted less than 2 minutes. So that can even fall between radar scans that we don't even get the data to know that something like that is happening. And of course, the radars are kind of far apart too, and that makes it
Yeah.
even more difficult to see those storms.
Yeah, we
So
often count on those storms being causing weaker tornadoes, but we even saw like August 2 years ago, it was an EF2 that dropped and was down for a little while in a very messy convective storm. And so we can't always rely on getting weaker tornadoes here, and we really just have to try to forecast best for the messy convection that we get.
and on the plateau, it's always super sneaky. I get the tornadoes up there. So when you actually just said that, it brought me to another question. We're talking about the quantity of tornadoes increasing across the region. Are we also noticing an uptick in the intensity and the duration of those tornadoes in our part of the country?
We haven't seen the tornado characteristics changed quite yet, or the data to support that, I should say, quite yet. But I think what you can expect is overall the types of tornadoes we get in the southeast will be more often. And those are overnight tornadoes quite frequently, out of season tornadoes, long track tornadoes, rain wrap tornadoes. So, all of the scary characteristics of southeast tornadoes. I mean, it's a really special region to study because it's so unique, but the risk is so high here, and all of those scary characteristics that we experience are going to happen more often because we're going to see more tornadoes in this region compared to the Great Plains.
And so that puts more people here at risk that maybe 50 years ago weren't necessarily, the risk wasn't quite as high. It's always been here, but now that number is kind of ticking upward. So let's talk about some of the things that people can do, because I read a quote that says, you can't control the risk, but we can control our response. So, what are some of the things that you would recommend to folks hearing this right now that are going, oh my gosh, this is scary? What would you say to them to help kind of reassure them and set them in the right direction with this information?
Yeah, I think if you prepare and you stay aware, then it doesn't have to be scary. I think making sure, I mean, you can quickly, within 5 minutes, think, where am I usually during the day or during the weekend? Where are my most commonly visited places? And if I were there and a tornado warning happened, where should I go? And if you think through those scenarios and find yourself an answer, then you'll be ready to respond when one happens. Because as you know, Cassie, it's an average of about 15 minutes, right? And that's a well forecast storm that's easy to forecast. About 15 minutes usually that you have between a tornado warning and the tornado striking your area. And so we need people to know where to go so that during those 15 minutes they can get there. And so if you don't know where to go, I recommend you playing around online and looking at different solutions. If your house doesn't have a basement, for example, make sure you go into a room, an interior room. More walls between you and the storm is better. But you can look online and also look at various scenarios. If you live in an apartment complex or a mobile home, if you live in a mobile home, you should definitely evacuate, and making sure you understand your specific situation so that you can respond to the warning when you get it. And then that's the other part, right? Is just actually responding. I've noticed because we've had quite a few warnings lately, so many people said to me, like, yeah, especially the ones at night, yeah, I just laid down and just really hoped it wouldn't be bad. And I was like, oh my gosh, like there was literally a tornado just west of Knoxville and you just hoped it wouldn't hit you. So I think making sure you have a plan and you respond to it, even if it is inconvenient and in the middle of the night, is really important.
Yeah, we always try to emphasize, like you were saying, for folks to prepare before the storm. We have so many people when we start to really sound the alarm when we have a higher risk that are like, wait a minute, I don't know what county I live in. Wait a minute, I've never thought about where I would go. And when we're already in the event, we don't have the time to answer the hundreds of questions that come in like that. So it's really important for folks before the event happens to learn some of the landmarks that are around them so that when we're tracking those storms on TV and we say it's coming by the Walmart on Chapman Highway, that you're like, I live near that. Maybe that's going to affect me in case we don't maybe just say your specific town or street name or whatever, but also, like you said, having ways to receive those alerts. That's the important part too, having multiple ways because folks do want to go to bed.
Yeah.
Like I get it. You want to sleep at night when there's a chance for some storms too, but like you got to have those ways to receive alerts. And more importantly, the psychology of the warnings. Folks have to respond when that warning is issued, right?
Yeah, and I think it's most important because the timing may even be shorter here, right? Because of our complex scenarios, getting the warning and realizing, okay, I may have 5 to 10 minutes, getting to your safe spot and then checking for more information, making yourself safe, and then logging on to WBIR and like watching the forecast and figuring out where it is compared to where you are. But I think like getting yourself to shelter first is really important.
Yeah, and having that shelter prepared ahead of time. I know I'll tell my personal story. In this the house that I have right now, we don't really have a very well designated like safe space. It's a wonderful open floor plan, but it doesn't leave a lot of safe places to go. And so our front closet, our like coat closet, I guess is our safe place. To get in there, I literally have to sit on my fiance's lap to like both of us to fit in that space. But we had to practice that and move the shoes out of the bottom and like be prepared. And I think that's what folks have to do ahead of time too, is know where you're going to go, but also make sure your space is ready, because that's not the time to be like, oh man, I've been needing to move that dresser. Get it
Yeah,
out of
yeah,
the
exactly. And it may be a time to have awkward conversations because we also have the beautiful, terrible during severe weather open floor plan. And so our plan is our pantry, but there's only one wall and then it's the garage. And so it's like, okay, EF1, EF2, like a weaker event is expected. Our pantry's going to be fine. But if there's a really strong storm coming through, we're probably going to have to go to one of the few basements in our neighborhood. And so we've already had a discussion with one of our neighbors that has one of the basements. She's like, you all are always welcome here. And so, yeah, we may have a 2 a.m. neighborhood party in her basement sometime. And it's worth just making sure you have that plan for these severe events.
Another thing you brought up too, mobile homes. That it's someone's home. So it's hard to say this is not going to be safe, but it isn't. Typically, it's not built to withstand the type of wind. It's not anchored properly in most cases. And that's something that folks that live in mobile homes, you can take extra steps to get the extra straps and the extra things like that to help raise that wind tolerance for your mobile home. But for folks that haven't, it's so hard to ask to do that. But and when folks are like, where should I go? You got to find that friend or that family member, or maybe go hang out at a local business that has a sturdy building, because that's going to be your best bet. And that's again part of the psychology of the warning, is just sitting back and going, I hope it doesn't get here, isn't
Yeah,
going to help you when that storm comes through.
it isn't. And that's really complicated, right? If you're in that home. So it's time to figure it out now, right now, today, like figure out where will I go if it happened at night or during the day and I'm in my home, and making sure you have that plan so you're ready to take off when you have a 10-minute warning time.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Is there anything else that you would like to add in that maybe we didn't get to discuss?
No, I think that's it. I'm really glad we focused on how to help people prepare because it's so important to keep everyone safe.
Absolutely. And of course, we will continue to track the storms. You'll continue to track the data so we can bring people updates on this as we go along. And I look forward to working with you again in the future.
Thanks, Cassie. Good talking to you.